Luis Enrique is set to change his tactic as Paris Saint-Germain. Paris Saint-Germain's last game, as we all know, was versus Stade de Reims, where Luis Enrique started with this lineup, but at halftime subbed out Gonçalo Ramos and brought Vitinha on and put Kang In-lee as a center forward. Obviously, Paris Saint-Germain performed better in the second half, but it could be due to other reasons. But after the game, this report came out from Fabrice Hawkins. Luis Enrique is considering opting for the formation with a false 9 in attack, with Kang In-lee and Marco Asensio being the two main options at false 9. In doing so, Gonçalo Ramos would be demoted down in the pecking order. Randal Colomwani has the advantage of being able to play on the right wing, which would make him an option to rotate with Ousmane Dembélé. Obviously, this is how Paris Saint-Germain play. But Lucho wants to play with a false 9. It could be Kang In-lee or it could be Marco Asensio. If we also show this in different animations that Paris Saint-Germain play, for example, when it becomes a 3-4-3, when Hakimi tucks into the midfield, it will look like this. It can also look like this when Marco Asensio drops and makes it a 4-man midfield. Or if we play a bit more defensive with a 4 at the back, it could become more of a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. Obviously, Vitinha can still tuck in into the midfield, making it still a 4-man midfield without Hakimi tucking in. And it can also look like this, more of a 3-5-2 with Dembélé and Kylian Mbappé up top. And obviously, this is perfect for Kylian Mbappé because this gives him as much space as possible up there in attack, because Asensio, as I said, he likes to drop deep a lot, which will leave all the space up front for Kylian Mbappé, both on the left, playmaking with play like Vitinha, or in the central areas with Marco Asensio, or on the right hand side areas with Ousmane Dembélé. But this isn't something new. This isn't Lucho trying out something extreme or something we've never done this season. Quite the opposite. Lucho's just returning to what worked for him in the beginning of the season. Obviously, before Marco Asensio's injury, this is how Paris Saint-Germain played. And as you can see in these two, if you want to call them heat maps, you can see that Asensio is dropping deep and it becomes nearly a 4-2-2-2-2, both in the Arcelon game and the Olympique de Lyonnais game, which obviously Paris Saint-Germain won both games very comfortably 4-1 and 3-1. But as you can see, Marco Asensio is dropping deep, Dembélé pushes up a bit more, and Mbappe has all that free space up in attack. And Kylian Mbappe obviously in both of these games scored 4 goals combined. And this is how it could look. One of the animations at least, Vitinha can tuck in on the left or stay on the left side. Asensio can tuck in on the side and in the center, and it gives me chills because it looks very similar to how Thomas Tuchel used to line up at Paris Saint-Germain, 4 at the back with a holding 2-man pivot with Marco Verratti and Marquinhos, Di Maria and Neymar as the 2 playmakers, and Icardi and Mbappe up top. This so-called formation switch or formation return, as I like to call it, will obviously help a lot of Paris Saint-Germain players. One of them most notably will be Kang In-lee, who because of Dembélé's impressive performances has had only to play on the left-hand side, but we know that Kang In-lee's best football, with him being a left-footed player, he wants to cut in, so it's either on the right-hand side or in the central areas. And with Dembélé being able to push up a bit more, maybe Kang In-lee, if he plays as the center forward, he can rotate with him on the right-hand side and be in the central areas. This will also obviously help Manuel Ugarte and Warren Zaire-Emery, especially in tough Champions League games where there's a lot of pressure, because we have seen that sometimes under the pressure, especially a player like Manuel Ugarte, his passing ability diminishes a lot. But with a player like Marco Asensio and Kang In-lee being able to drop deep and help out the midfield, this will help out Paris Saint-Germain a lot, especially in big games. Another player that this formation return will help is Bradley Barcola, because I believe if we're going to play this formation, we need 2 wingers that can beat 1v1 players, and Barcola should be maybe our starting left midfielder instead of Vitinha, because he can actually beat someone. And with Asensio being able to drop in the midfield, Vitinha's role is less important in this ball retention stuff and maybe can start playing in the center. But obviously this tactic will have some bad news for some players, and that is Randal Colomwani and Gonçalo Ramos, even as the report mentioned. But Colomwani, thankfully for him, as the report also said, he can play on the right hand side. He can play along with Ousmane Dembélé. Lucho even tried him on the left in the beginning of the season. Maybe he will try out that again. But Colomwani still has some life at Paris Saint-Germain. Whilst Gonçalo Ramos, it looks like the beginning of the end, because this means he will be the bench player for Kylian Mbappé. And one thing we know is that Kylian Mbappé plays every game due obviously to his physical fitness, being able to play every game, and his hard mentality, wanting to play every game. So this is really bad news for a player like Gonçalo Ramos, and even more bad reports, obviously, he was subbed out during halftime. And this is what Luis Enrique had to say after the game. He's a great player with a great mentality. He didn't deserve to get subbed out, but if it was my decision, and he accepted it. I'm very happy with him. He's going to be important this season. But then a PSG reporter inside said this: Gonçalo Ramos had difficulty accepting to come out at halftime. He was very upset and didn't speak to anyone. He's very disappointed to have missed out on his match. But I believe this is a part of going to the glory. This is part of success in football. You have to make it better for other players and make it worse for other players if it makes it better for the team. And as I mentioned in the previous video, has Gonçalo Ramos and Kolo Muani being a flop at Paris Saint-Germain, I mentioned that Paris Saint-Germain are not playing to their strengths. We're not trying to feed passes to Gonçalo and Kolo 5 times a game. No, if they get a chance, it will be 1 or 2 every single game here and there where they get the ball and they have to finish. And as we can see by the stats here, Marco Asensio's only played 3 games compared to Kolo's 9 and Gonçalo's 11. But he has pretty much the same amount of goals. He has a much less XG, which tells us that even though he has 2 goals in 3 games, it doesn't mean he's getting tons of chances every game. No, he's just been extremely more clinical than the other 2. His XAG is better than them. His XG per 90 is better. His XAG per 90 is better. His goal creating actions per 90 is better. And his shot creating actions per 90 is better. So from the few minutes we have seen Marco Asensio, obviously we cannot be too reactionary in this moment, but he has been better on the pitch than both Gonçalo and Kolo Muani. And as I also mentioned in that video, to be the so-called striker in this formation, Lucho wants 3 stuff from you. He wants off the ball movement, playmaking with the ball, and defensive accountability. Obviously, number 1 and number 3, Gonçalo and Kolo Muani can still do. But when it comes to playmaking with the ball, I believe still Kolo Muani is a bit better than Gonçalo, but Kang In Lee and Marco Asensio are levels ahead of them, which puts them ahead of them in the pecking order. And again, this is completely understandable, as again I said in that video, because Kylian Mbappe is our best player, he's our best attacker, and we want to build the attack around him. Instead of having a player there that's not going to help, that once the team built around him, that's the role of the striker. It's much better for Paris Saint-Germain to just put a center forward next to Kylian Mbappe who can play make, who can move around, who can help the midfield, who can help the wingers, instead of just being there, having no touches and losing the ball. This though is a bit worrying, not for the team, not for the season in my opinion, but a bit worrying when it comes to the board and Luis Campos, because here we have Randal Kolo Muani and Gonçalo Ramos both signed for 140 million euros, but at the moment it does not look like they are the preferred option to start games for Luis Enrique. And this puts the question, did Luis Enrique want either of the 2 players? Obviously, Randal Kolo Muani was a QSI, Nasser, and Mir signing, whilst Gonçalo Ramos was a Luis Campos signing. And as we guessed throughout the summer, maybe Lucho didn't want these players. He obviously wanted a player in the caliber of Olmo, Dani Olmo from RB Leipzig, and Pedri from Barcelona, and that tells you what Lucho wanted, which is not what Gonçalo and Kolo Muani are. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about this new tactic from Luis Enrique? And as I said, this is what we played in the beginning of the season. We're just returning to it now, with Marco Asensio being available and Kang In Lee as well. That's been it from your boy PSG. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the PSG YouTube channel, and as always, allez Paris!